and that the community members got to meet some of our wonderful students here that are doing great things on their journey through academia. The Pay It Forward program started 7 years ago. It's just hard to believe that we started in the SMIC Camp Alumni House with less than 50 people. And we had 25 students and 25 it was pretty close as an equal split to students. So the goal is threefold. The goal was to try to find a way that we could bring students throughout our community, Fresno State, together with the broader community. One of our first goals was to try to bring the community and the students together with the hope that we could share with each other over lunch and connect on a meaningful level. So often within the university setting, we don't get to mix outside of our own disciplines, let alone bring community members in from the broader Central Valley who can be here too to meet and be part of that conversation. So those were the first two goals: to create an opportunity here for that type of community to be created and developed, and to make sure we could continue to do outreach to bring in more community members and more students. I know many of the students here today were gently nudged by a professor to come and attend the Pay It Forward luncheon. I'm all for that, because my goal is that today you will find not only this a good free lunch, you get to sit down and enjoy it and not run on the go and put something down, but you can actually sit and relax and enjoy your lunch and good conversation. But more importantly, that you'll think it's great to come back for the next one. We'll have 3 this semester, and my hope is that you will bring your friends as well. We want to, if we could, we'd fill this room up with twice as much people as we have today. So please spread the word if you enjoy yourself. I'm glad you've enjoyed the conversation. Students, I hope you got names. I hope you've networked. And community members, thank you for coming onto our campus. So on behalf of the Lyle Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, Fresno State, welcome to the first of 3 sessions this semester. The third element, so we wanted to have a free lunch, we wanted to create a joint community, and our third goal was to try to bring in an interesting speaker that could inspire our students. The only prerequisite that we have for those speakers is they have to have a connection with our San Joaquin Valley. They could have been born here and raised here and left here and coming back, or maybe they're not back and maybe they're just visiting. They could have attended Fresno State and graduated from the school. Whatever their paths and journeys have taken them, we want a connection to our valley. And so we've had some amazing speakers who have come and shared their experiences with the students. And because we have such a mixed group of students here, we have students that are from, I'm going to point over here because I know that some of the engineers are over here. We have business students, we have ag students, we have industrial tech students. We are trying to reach every corner of our university community. And in doing that, we want to bring in speakers that can talk to all of you. And so even though that hasn't been a central part of our goal, it has happened that way. They've all been able to talk to the interdisciplinary nature of this meeting, and they've also been able to inspire in different industries that they represent. And today is absolutely no exception. I am so pleased that we have a Fresno State alum with us today, somebody who graduated in 2006. He was one, I believe, I hope I'm not going to misspeak, Victor, but I believe you were one of the first students to participate in an international program when you went to Sweden as a Fresno State student. He was the head of the Collegiate Entrepreneur Organization's local chapter here at Fresno State, and very active in that. He was part of the Entrepreneur Mentor Program, and he forged some really strong relationships through his journey that basically has brought him back here with us this afternoon. Victor Gonzalez is inspirational. He has a great story to share with you, and he's going to share a story that is part of my daily mantra, which is trying to use a growth mindset to help you along your personal and professional journey. And I think that the story and Victor's story is going to resonate, hopefully, with all of you, and that I challenge you to each take something away from here today. It doesn't have to be the whole presentation, but if you can just grab a gem, that will be great. So it's with my great pleasure that I introduce to you Victor Gonzalez, today's Pay It Forward speaker.
Alrighty, well, thank you very much for having me today, and thank you for coming out and spending some time with all of us here, and hopefully we get some good networking happening, which is, I think, one of the cornerstones of coming out to Fresno State, and it's one of the tools that's available while you are here, so definitely something that you want to use and employ, and I'll get into that here in a little bit. But also I want to thank Fresno State and the Lau Center for hosting this here today, and I will definitely say that this was my home for 4 years, and I would almost use the term home literally because I spent so much time here. I didn't receive mail here, but I definitely, I had in the library, there was a nice area where I could go through and put 2 chairs together in between classes, so I needed a quick nap. I, by all means, lived here. So thank you very much for having me here today. But part of the reason why this came up was there's a lot of changes that have happened this year, and as I was looking around Fresno, I noticed that a lot of the students that I went to school with, or at least a few of them, are now community leaders, and it's essentially my peers. So look around, and the peers that are next to you could very well be some of the leaders in Fresno coming up, so forge those friendships. And one of those is, of course, my wife, which I met here as well, too. So look around. Your spouse may be in the audience today as well. But as I looked around, I really wanted to do something that was going to start connecting all of us together and also connect us back to the university and hopefully get something done that we could go ahead and make Fresno an even better place. And I was sharing this earlier as I came up that my wife and I like to go to San Francisco quite a bit and essentially just enjoy the city. But as you go there, it feels like such an established place, such a just large city, and it feels like it's hard to make a difference. But in Fresno, it's small enough where you can go ahead and establish those types of things and make those types of changes and have that impact. But at the same time, it's one of those cities that's growing very quickly. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity, and the hope is that as everyone graduates, that you make this place an even better place, and don't leave. Stay here in Fresno. We'd love for that to happen. So with that, I'm going to go through and talk a little bit about how I came up with the title for the presentation. And it was really quite simple. I was asked by email, hey, we need a title for your speech, and this is what came out. But it felt like a pretty big task as I was selecting it, because ultimately, this was, I think, 2 months ago or so, and I thought, oh, the title is really going to cement what I'm going to talk about here today. So as I was going through deciding the title of the speech, it was really inspired by this guy, Sir Edmund Hillary. Does anybody know who that is? Sir Edmund Hillary? A couple hands raised? Yes, fantastic. So first person to summit Mount Everest. And part of the reason why I know who this is because I've consumed all types of mountaineering and backpacking and hiking media, because it's one of my favorite activities. And it's actually something that was born out of Fresno State. So as I enrolled here, I was going through and looking through the catalog, and I noticed that the kinesiology department had a bunch of 1-unit courses that you could take that would expose you to new things. Backpacking was one of those, whitewater rafting was one of those, fencing was one of those, and I thought, okay, I'm going to go through and take all of these. And backpacking really stuck with me, so that was one of those fun things. So definitely look through the catalog. There might be some classes that are there for you to take that you can just go out and explore something new, which would be pretty cool. But this quote essentially immediately resonated with me as I read it. So, it is not the mountain we conquer, but ourselves. So you can see some parallels with the title of my speech there. But it really resonated with me as I read that, because one, I loved backpacking, and I knew how hard that was. Granted, not to the same degree of what he was doing. He was summiting mountains that had never been summited. And in fact, the previous attempts, people had not made it back down. So definitely a much, much larger feat than what I was doing. But I knew that through these activities, there is a lot of work that goes into it, and I know what it takes. Especially when you tell people of what you're going to go out and do for fun. You know, hey, you're going to go carry a 50-pound backpack up a mountain and then sleep in the cold on the floor. Is that how you want to spend your vacation? Yes, yeah, it's absolutely fun. But with thinking about that and really the title, I wanted to go through and put together a structure and some points of things that have helped me as I navigate through my life, personal life, professional life, that ultimately speak to conquering yourself. And part of the reason why I like that term, conquering yourself, is because there's a lot of noise that tends to happen when you go out and you have to make big decisions or go out and do big things. There's a lot of external noise that can happen, whether people saying, well, why are you doing that? I remember even in my time here, there's a couple projects that I had taken on where I was donating a lot of my time, and you'd hear that noise around you. Why are you doing that? You're not receiving anything for it. Well, that's not necessarily why I was doing those things. But essentially, I wanted to go through and create that framework that I've used, that I found helpful, and that I've noticed that it is a common thread in those people who are achieving things. So I wanted to speak a little bit towards that. Alrighty, so with that, we'll go ahead to the first point. And one of the things that I'll go ahead and point out is the pictures on these slides are some of the ones that I've taken as I've gone out backpacking. So I wanted to go ahead and share those since they're sitting on a drive, or, well, a lot of these are on Facebook, but I thought I'd throw them up here as well. This one I'll go ahead and share. It's Temple Crag on the east side of the Sierras off the 395. Put a photo on the bottom right corner of me actually taking this photo. And one of the reasons why I've always liked this activity is, as I was shooting that, you can't see it in the photo, but it was incredibly windy, incredibly cold. I was sitting there shivering, taking this photo, and I couldn't have been more happy. It's just one of my favorite activities. It's a little bit of a rush. And that's ultimately the photo that came out of that, which I thought was pretty cool. But anywho, so one of the things that I've always found very, very important is to do hard things. To do hard things, because ultimately I feel that it fulfills the purpose of who we are. It helps us essentially get our act together, structure ourselves to go ahead and accomplish things. And oftentimes, hard things may be handed to us by whether it be school or whether it be our jobs. But I think it's important for us to go out and seek those things, and definitely have it be something that is of interest to us, that's ultimately going to help us succeed. But do not shy away from doing those difficult things, because I think it is a big part of fulfilling essentially our purpose as people. So do not shy away from those. And part of the way that I wanted to structure today is go through and talk about some of these points, but also pair it with a story that of my personal life or professional life that will help illustrate this particular point. So with that, I wanted to share a story of my professional career, and one of the things that I wanted to do with this is I wanted to show essentially almost like the behind the scenes of what happens when you're doing some of these things. Because I think it's very easy to come up and say, hey, I took this position and I nailed it, I killed it. And I didn't necessarily share how I got to that point. And I wanted to share some of the other thoughts that went through my head as I was going through and taking these positions and taking these big steps. Because ultimately, they're I think, human emotions that you have when you are about to do something big. So I wanted to share that. And don't get me wrong, when I took this promotion I'm going to talk about, I owned it. I killed it. I did great. It's just I want to share how we got to that point. Okay, so with that, I'll go ahead and dive in. So in 2015, after being at Granville Homes for 8 years, I took the position of sales manager. Ultimately, I left as vice president of sales in January, and it was definitely one of those really cool opportunities that came up, and immediately when it came up, I thought, I'm going to jump on this. It's definitely one of those great things for my career. There's going to be a lot to learn out of this here. And as I stepped into it, immediately I noticed, there's a lot of moving parts here that I have to deal with. I need to go through and figure out. And there are thoughts that go through your head of like, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to do this? Is this something that I'm going to be able to complete? Because I was stepping into a position that had very, very high expectations in a very notable company. And my predecessor spoke the language of the management team of the company, and it was one that I was still learning. So I stepped into the position knowing that I was good at my previous position, which I was one of the sales agents out in the field, and I was good at that. And I knew that I wanted to grow, and I knew that this was a good opportunity. But once you're in that seat, you go, oh, this is hard. Is this something that I'm going to be able to continue to do for the aforementioned reasons? But one of the things that really helped me out as I was trying to figure those things out, and you've probably heard the phrase before, you want to surround yourself with people who want you to succeed, or even people who are better at a particular skill because they will help you grow. And I definitely had that around me. I definitely had people who wanted to see me succeed, and that was one of the things that was very helpful in completing that task. But also, one of the things that really helped was surrounding myself, even if it wasn't people who were immediately in the room with me, surrounding myself with material, taking in information that was going to help me grow ultimately. And I used essentially books. As I went through and I was trying to figure some of these positions out, I thought, okay, well, or some of these things out that my position required, I thought, okay, I'm not the only one to have gone through an experience such as this, and people do this for a living. They go through and they accomplish a big feat or something that they feel that is worth sharing. They will write it down. They will make it into a book. They will sell it. And ultimately, if you go to Audible, they will read it to you as well. They will tell you exactly how to go about and do it. So one of the things that I did is I surrounded myself with books such as this. It's Your Ship, Sales Management Simplified, First Time Manager, and this was essentially what I was listening to on a daily basis. Whenever I wasn't at work, I was feeding my mind this type of information. And it really helped because especially, I'll tell you, that First Time Manager book, that was the first one that I bought, and as I looked on Audible, the title really just said it all, right? How could I not buy it? But it was pretty interesting. And one of the things that, essentially how the book started is it said, hey, you were probably tapped on the shoulder because you were good at your previous job. And I thought, yeah, I was pretty good at that. And now that you're doing this new position, you're realizing that it's a completely different job. And I thought, oh yeah, it's definitely not selling homes anymore. Now I have a team that I'm leading, having to work with the management team, having to set direction, having to help give an opinion on where we're going to build in town. And it's definitely things that I had not done before. But it was really reassuring to know that, hey, this book is telling me that other people have gone through this experience. So it was like, hey, you got this. You can figure this out. And also, as the book continued, it said, well, since you were really good at your previous job, now you're probably thinking that you're not so good at your current job that you're doing now. You want to go back to your old job. And I thought, oh my gosh, this guy's writing a book about me. But it was really cool to essentially hear that other people had gone through those experiences and those stories, and it was really reassuring, and it really helped me push forward through that. And I think ultimately going back to the point of doing hard things is, I think it's important to expect to have setbacks as you embark on new expeditions. That's part of the process. It's definitely part of what will happen as you go through and you embark on those things. And ultimately, when you go through and accomplish them, it's an incredible feeling of accomplishment and satisfaction. And I will say that, like I said earlier, I absolutely own the position. After 7 years of doing it, we accomplished some amazing things. We completely revamped the department, I'll tell you a little bit about that. Essentially, my title was Vice President of Sales, so I was in charge of selling homes and the team selling homes. But also, even beyond that, really, nobody gets paid until a home closes escrow. So then at that point, I thought, well, you know what? We can actually even ramp up our revenue by closing more homes, by improving our interdepartmental communication, and essentially trying to get communities from essentially conception to delivery. If we can shorten that time frame, we will ramp up our closing numbers. So it wasn't just the sales end. I thought of myself more as a closing manager. So not only did I revamp the department, we formed this incredible data center that linked a lot of our departments and gave us a lot of real-time information so that when we sat down, we can actually go through and make quick decisions and really close more homes, not just looking at it from a sales perspective. So that was one of the things that I did throughout my time there, was really migrate from just the responsibility of selling to actually, let's step back and look at this holistically, and how do we improve the process across the board, especially communication, so that we could better deliver. So ultimately, my message on this point is don't shy away from doing hard things. It's definitely something that's going to help you, and ultimately, it is my opinion that when you accomplish those, that it makes you a better person altogether. So that is point number 1. Alrighty, second quote. Anybody know who Tenzing Norgay is? All right, some of the same hands went up earlier, which is great. So if you know who summited, then you probably know who was with him, which Tenzing Norgay was definitely an integral part of that, definitely deserves recognition as well. So part of the reason why I put him up here. But also he had this fantastic quote of, to travel, to experience, and to learn, that is to live. And I definitely abide by that. And it actually will dovetail into my next point, which is feed your mind new experiences. And then this also is a photo that I shot that I thought was kind of cool. My wife will probably remember this one because we were crossing the bridge, and I think we turned around, and I'm like, I need to get a photo of this. We went and parked and climbed down this embankment, and I pulled out my tripod and started shooting. So definitely it's an adventure when we go out. But anywho, so take adventures. It's definitely fun. But this particular point, feed your mind new experiences. And I think this is a very important one as well, and I think it's one that served me very well, is to ultimately have a curious mind. Have a curious mind and get to that why. And I think we've probably heard that quote from was it Simon Sinek that says getting to why. And I think that's a very important quote as well, because ultimately getting to why gets you to the root of the problem or the issue, and it helps you really solve and keeps you from spinning your wheels trying to solve other parts of that particular problem, but really getting to the root of why. But part of the reason why I feel that feeding your mind new experiences is really important is that it really builds that database in your mind of resources that you can tap into when going through and solving problems. And oftentimes it might be something that you might have a problem before you that you are looking at it at a completely different way of trying to solve that particular problem, because you don't even know that there is a different way of approaching that particular problem because you don't know, haven't experienced it. I've always liked the term or the quote, you don't know what you don't know. Definitely sounds very catchy, but when you break it down, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what things are out there that you need to take into account because you're not even aware of them. They're not even on your radar. And I think that's one of those, when you really break it down and slow it down, I think it becomes pretty profound, and you start realizing, oh my gosh, there are things out there that I'm not even aware of that I need to account for. So definitely, the more you feed your mind, the more information that you will have with you to make decisions. And this becomes very important in what I've done, because I feel like and really what we all do, because I feel that people have been very central to my career in sales, but also my career in management. And I think both of them really come down to communication. Is the message that you're getting out there being received by the person who is receiving it? And I think that becomes very important. And the more you feed your mind, the better you will understand how that works, and I'll get into a couple stories about that as well. But also this served very well in my professional career, especially working for a home builder for 15 years. We covered many different aspects of in that particular business, from one, floor plans and what was the most functional for families, but also the marketing aspect, the customer experience aspect. So whenever I would go out anywhere, whether it be to a hotel, whether it be to an event, I would always be looking around to see, well, what is it that the protocols that are in place at that particular place, what are they trying to accomplish? We would go to a concert, and you'd see a bank of porta potties, and you would take a look and you go, why did they put them there? Oh, the flow of traffic. Actually, that's where you want people to go, and they're tucked away, and they're actually, hey, they're in the appropriate direction, or they're in the right place so that the wind doesn't carry anything. But you start looking at those things, and they start cross-pollinating with what you do. You start getting inspired to take those ideas and implement them in what you do on a day-to-day. So definitely taking in new experiences will increase that database, and I think it becomes very important. And also, like I mentioned earlier, books. Books are another great way where, one, you can go through and have these experiences and cross-pollinate from there, or know that there are resources out there to directly find that knowledge that you are looking for. And I think that it's pretty established that you can go on Google and type in anything, and chances are there will be some resources that you can find. So absorb as much of that material. And I will share that as I prepared for this presentation, you bet that I went on YouTube and looked up how to present, how to not get nervous, how to go through and essentially become an effective communicator. And granted, this is stuff that I like doing as well, but I needed to brush up, and I went and looked for those resources. And I have a story that I want to share about feeding your mind new experiences. And it's as I mentioned earlier, curiosity. I've always had the curious mind, and I've always tried to foster it. And there's a couple examples throughout my life that I can think that were very pivotal in helping me move forward. And there's two of those that I wanted to share. One of those was, I think, probably to some extent, we've all felt, and I'm going to go way back here, I'm going to go back to our high school days, where maybe didn't quite feel that we'd found our people during that time frame. We had friends, I had friends, I had a good time, don't get me wrong, but I didn't feel that I had my people. I didn't feel that I had those friendships established that would last me a lifetime. And it's pretty funny, and even just having the conversations here and catching up with everybody, we are so interconnected here from our time at Fresno State, from friends, from so much more than gosh, I even realized. So I definitely found my people, which makes me very happy. But in high school, I definitely felt that. And there was one experience that I had, which was for the pilot program it was called Cosmos, and it was at UC Santa Cruz. And I actually had a chance to travel to that particular program. And in short, what it was math and science camp. So yes, I went to math and science camp. I am that guy. But really, when you think about it, what it was, I should probably share what it was first. What it was math and science camp at UC Santa Cruz. It was a 4-week program with the sophomore year of high school, where I actually got to live on campus for those 4 weeks, take courses that were given by the professors at that time, and there were kids from all over the state who came to attend that particular program. And when we all arrived at the campus, we were all starting essentially socially from square one, so everyone was introducing themselves and meeting each other, and everybody thought that this program was going to be cool. And if you haven't been to UC Santa Cruz, it is one of the prettiest campuses you've ever been to. It's absolutely fantastic. But I remember at the end of that program, I remember thinking, the circle that I am around when I am at school and in my little piece of the world, it's such a little piece, and there is so much out there that I wasn't even aware of, especially with the people that I found there that I felt so comfortable with. I'll tell you, that last day, everyone was crying because everybody was essentially going back to their own part of the state. But I remember thinking, oh my gosh, my people are out there. There is so much more to explore. This is so much more than I even knew existed. I need to continue to try to foster that curiosity. And I carried that into Fresno State. And this is one of the things that I'll definitely recommend for everybody who's here, if you have the opportunity to do so, is get as involved as possible in programs that are available. And you've already taken a step by being here today, which is fantastic. But like I mentioned, there were so many connections that I've established here through university. I've met my wife here at the university. But also, I remember when I began attending here, I wanted to be involved. I wanted to find my people. I wanted to go out and do cool things. So as I embarked on my journey of essentially my degree and what it was going to be, which was entrepreneurship, I got involved with the Collegiate Entrepreneurs Organization. And I got involved in that, and I started finding some of those people, to the point where the person I work with today, the owner of my company, is somebody that I met here at Fresno State. And I remember when I met him, we both had that same curious mind. We both had that interest. We wanted to go out and seek new things. And at a certain point, we essentially said, hey, there is a study abroad program in Sweden for entrepreneurship. Why don't we go do that? I'm like, sweet, let's go do that. Let's jump out. I want to go through and explore the world and see what's out there. And I have to say, that was probably one of the best things that I have ever done. I definitely encourage you, if you have the opportunity to do so, definitely do it for so many different reasons. Because I find it incredibly interesting and beneficial to go to places and talk to people where things are different. People do things differently from the way that we do them. And it's interesting to see other people's normality and to go, hey, that works too. Because you also take inspiration from that, you bring it home, and it ultimately broadens your perspective, and it helps you understand people, which again, whether you're doing management or sales or whatever it may be, communication is a big part of that. You want to make sure that people are receiving the message that you are getting, and ultimately, or that you are sending, and ultimately that level of understanding will get more things accomplished. But during that time, as we embarked, right before we left, I was actually sharing this story earlier. As we embarked, we had a send-off dinner that was held, and as I'm sitting at that particular table, my friend's family happened to be prominent business members here in Fresno. And I'm sitting at the table listening to them speak about development here in Fresno. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, as I'm hearing these conversations, these guys are playing next level chess. They're playing that 3D chess where, there's multiple planes. I don't even know how to explain it. But I thought that is what they're doing. And I thought, I want to be involved in this. And ultimately, they were the proprietors of Granville Homes and the Assembly Group. And as I listened to them speak and the ideas that they had, I thought, I want to be involved in this. I want to do this. And ultimately, when we got back from that experience in Sweden, I came back and selected my courses in my entrepreneurship program for real estate and also construction management because I was just so fascinated by it. So ultimately, from having that curious mind and going through and wanting to be involved and trying to gather more information, I ultimately had an amazing experience abroad where the type of schooling that we were doing was completely different. Class was essentially 2 days a week, and we might not meet for a week. We would just have to come back with our projects to present. So different way of schooling, different perspectives. Not only did we have a bunch of Sweden students there, but it was an international business school. So there were students from all over the world. And that was incredibly important to be able to get that perspective as well. And from that as well, I essentially was able to select a career path because I was just exposed to things that I didn't even know existed. So definitely get involved as much as possible. Put as much of this knowledge into your tank. Have that curious mind, explore, because one, you will be able to better solve problems, but also two, you will be exposed to a lot more and opportunities will present themselves from it. So get as involved as possible as you can. All righty. Point number 3. You've probably heard this one before. Just do it. So to be fair, my point is going to come up next. I don't want to use this one because I don't want to get sued. But it is a fantastic one, and it's one that we see so often. It's a slogan for a major manufacturer, right? Just do it. But when you really break it down, it's one of my favorite sayings. Just go out and do it. Just get it done. And when you really break it down and you listen to it, and I think that's an important one, and I'll share why here in just a second. So I changed mine to just go. Probably yeah. Like I said, I don't want to get sued. But just go do it, just get it done. And I'll share a little bit about this picture as well. This is actually my brother-in-law. So kind of funny story. So I have incredible pictures of my brother-in-law because he's my backpacking partner, and I'm the one with the camera, so I'm never in them. It's always him. So yeah, this is as we were coming down from Mount Whitney a couple years ago, which that was also an incredible experience. We took the long route, the 7-day route, across the Sierras from west to east. That was absolutely incredible. So definitely recommend that if you haven't done that. And if this is your thing, if sleeping in the cold dirt is your thing, then definitely do this one. But this is one of those things that I've always abided by and sort of in my head is just to go out and do it. Just go out and get things done for a couple different reasons, and I'll share why. I would always joke that Pinterest is where people's ideas go to die because everyone will pin everything on Pinterest, but no one ever does anything. So I definitely recommend to go out and instead of, definitely pin them so that you can go through and accomplish them, but push forward and get things done. And here's why. Here's where I wanted to go through and break that down. Because I think as we go out and we decide to do big things or scary things as well, part of what happens is there's a lot of noise that will happen, whether internal or external. And you might have thoughts of, well, am I good enough to do this? Or can I do it? Or can I accomplish it? Or it's too hot outside, it's too cold outside, or it's too pretty outside, I want to go ride my bike. Or one of the common ones that may happen is, well, what if I fail? What if I'm just not good enough to go ahead and do that? And I think that the words failure or fail, well, gosh, we'll throw all of those in there. Fail, failure, mistakes. I feel like they all have this very, very negative connotation. But if I think handled properly, they become an incredible learning opportunity that I think it's to be expected. It's something that you should plan for it. I was thinking about this last night, trying to find an analogy that would help with this, and I started thinking of dominoes. Essentially, as you set them up, and definitely once one starts going, yes, you could potentially have your entire masterpiece go out. But if you build breaks in, you can operate within those breaks and make those types of mistakes and take chances and have it be okay. Build it into your process. Because I think that's important. And I want to take that negative connotation of those words as much as possible. And definitely, sometimes mistakes will cost money. They'll cost us opportunities and what have you. But I think they're also part of the process. And if handled correctly and if you build them into what you want to accomplish, I think that there's definitely opportunity there. And I want to share a little bit about how I implemented this on the business side of things. So as one of the things that was great that I learned quite a bit from my previous position was one, communication, but also managing teams. And I think that was probably one of the hardest things that I had to learn when taking on that particular position. As you'll find out, you probably have already, it's very hard for us to delegate things because we want to have our name on it, or we have a specific way of doing things, and we feel that nobody else is going to be able to do it to the level that we want. And when you're leading a team, it really comes down to actually enabling the team to run those parts of the business and giving them the power to do it. There's a great quote. I don't know if anyone here follows Formula One, if anyone knows who Toto Wolff is, but I was watching this interview with him. He's the team principal for Mercedes, who had been essentially the most winning team the last 6-7 years or so. But he had a quote that really snapped management into focus for me, and he essentially said something to the extent of, I don't know how to design an aerodynamic surface, I don't know how to drive the car. Part of my job is to go through and create a framework for the people who do to operate at their best. And I remember when I heard that quote, I thought, oh my gosh, that's it. That's how I should go through and run my teams. But part of what I would do is I would go ahead and build in those opportunities for the team to speak up, to make changes, to make mistakes. And it was always about finding solutions to the problem and not necessarily putting blame on a specific person. We try to take that away as much as possible. And even then, there's an instance that I'm thinking in my mind, which I won't get into the details of it, but I remember at one of our meetings, we were having these two team members essentially having pretty aggressive conversations with each other because one of them had made a quote-unquote mistake. But as we got into that particular conversation and essentially stopped the squabbling that was happened, and we really broke it down, we realized that the issue that had happened, it was really a procedural issue. It was a procedural issue that anybody in the team could have made that mistake. It just happened to land on that particular person at that particular time. So when we really removed the blaming of a specific person and went through and actually looked for why the mistake had happened, we found, oh, really, it was one of our procedures that was wrong. It was one of our procedures that was wrong that we then patched up. I remember we created distribution lists and what have you for us to better handle those situations in the future. But if you're focused on solutions, then you will fix the ultimate problem, as opposed to just putting it on somebody and blaming somebody for it. So in part, that's why I've always liked that term of going out and just do it, just get it done. And even there's a concept in business that I really like, which is termed minimally viable product, which is essentially a product that's going to come to market. We want to go ahead and some people may say, I want to get it perfect so that I can put it out to market, and at that point, development might take forever. But if you put it out there and you build in those processes to get the customer feedback, to put it out there and essentially get your foothold in the market, and ultimately let them tell you, they may actually help guide you and find some of the solutions to problems that you didn't even know your product had, or a use that you didn't even know your product may have had. So just go out and do it. Just do it. And with that being said, actually, I think oh yes, talent is overrated. So this is actually a book that I really liked as well, that I had listened to, because I know I've encountered this before where people had said, oh, well, stuff comes easy to you, so it's easy for you to go out and do things. No, that's definitely not the case. I think that's an easy cop-out for, hey, I don't want to put in the work to go through and get what I want done. And this book really resonated with me on that, because as I went through and read it, there were tons of examples that were discussed of, people like Tiger Woods was one of those, where people go, oh my gosh, he just has it. He's an amazing golfer because he just has it. No, there's instances in him on TV when he's 2 years old, essentially making these amazing shots, and had played golf for a significant amount of time. So if you picked up golf at 18, he had already been doing it for 16 years, because he had put in that much work into it. And even one of the examples that was used in this book was music. And oftentimes people will say, hey, well, you either have that musical gene or you don't. Either do or you don't. And they went through and studied a group of people and essentially measured how much practice they had put in, how much effort they had put in. Really, it was practice time specifically. And they found that the people who would have been said to have it were the ones who actually had the most amount of practice time in it. So definitely don't be discouraged by those, those phenoms that just seem to have it, because chances are you haven't seen how much work they put into it. So don't shy away from putting in the work. Expect to fail. That's part of the process. So just go out and do it. And with that, so as I bring this to the close, I'm going to put this up here because I have a lot of my contact information, so you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook and LinkedIn, and my phone number and all that good stuff is at the QR code there, so feel free if you want to get in contact with me or follow me. There's cool pictures and cool pictures of houses and all that good stuff. But as I bring the presentation to a close, one of the things that I wanted to share was essentially my goal for today was ultimately to go through and help give a few thoughts that will help, some of those common threads that I've seen that will help push forward, which was just go out and do it, do hard things, feed your mind new experiences. But not only that, there's sort of a little bit of a sub-story that's happened throughout here, which is really, as you go out and as you take on that next adventure, essentially pick the title of what your next chapter is going to be, find those points that are ultimately going to get you to accomplish that particular feat, and just go out and do it. And with that, thank you very much.
Okay, are there any questions for Victor? He covered a lot of really good material today, and I'm inspired. Are there any questions from the audience? Yes, Bertha.
Yes, actually, it's...
Here.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm sorry.
No problem. Yes, it's actually called The Whole Brain Child. I have 3 boys, and they're all, 7, 5, and 1. Did I get that right? Yes, okay. Oh my gosh, I went to go pick up some medication for them the other day, and they're like, date of birth? And I'm like, oh, goodness, okay. But I've been reading that book, and I think the reason why I share that book is ultimately there's tons of resources out there. There's tons of resources, and if you don't have time, Audible. The author will read it for you, and I'll listen to it as I'm washing my car. And ultimately, you get some really good information, and that book has been really helpful on that end, because that's a big part of my life right now is those little ones. So, yeah.
Vicki?
You mentioned something about staying in Fresno.
Yeah.
So, the Central Valley. Tell us about the opportunities that you see for business and professional jobs.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that I did in my previous life, as we were trying to understand what people were looking for in a home or where people were coming from. We really tried to understand why people made a move. And it was very interesting. When we started surveying people, why did they select to move a home? It was always because of a big life change. It was, either first home or kids. Kids were, now entering the home or they were leaving the home, big things such as that. But one of the things that we saw, especially during the pandemic, was there was a lot of people that were moving from Bay Area and San Francisco. And I think in part of that, which is why I feel pretty confident about price being, essentially relatively stable here in Fresno, is for a long time, I would always tell people that Fresno was California's best kept secret. Because when you looked at prices, especially real estate prices and cost of living, gosh, houses here were not half as much as LA or San Francisco. They were a lot less. Those communities were so much more expensive, to the point where I remember a couple houses that we had sold at Copper River. Great-grandparents had purchased a house in San Bruno. Gosh, I remember because they were, that PG&E explosion that had happened, they were the house that did not explode. Yeah, they were, so they sold their home, they moved out here, they bought a house for themselves and for their granddaughter and their great-grandkids with the sale of that particular home. So I think a lot of people started figuring that out, and especially with the ability to work remotely, especially in the tech industry, you don't have to live up in the Bay Area. So I feel that you will have continued growth and stable pricing here in Fresno, which I think will continue pushing Fresno forward. And I think that's one of the opportunities that's present, is I think there's going to be sustained growth here outside of whatever may be happening, whatever noise may be happening. And there are other cities throughout the country, like Austin, and cities in Idaho. I think Boise was another one of those where there's a lot of people who've been moving there. So a lot of growth expected. And I think that's where some of those opportunities present themselves for everything, not only for homes, but for businesses to support the additional people that are coming out. So that's where I see that. Yeah. Oh, we'll go here and then there. Yes.
You mentioned to just do it and to look at failure differently. But let's say you did it and you failed even your own expectations. How do you recover on a personal level and even on a professional level if you failed your own expectations for success?
You just got to throw it out. You just got to throw it out and restart. And I think that's one of the things that I will share this example. And it's almost kind of silly a little bit, but it's one of the things that's helped me. And I almost picture it mentally as tearing a page out of the book and throwing it away. Like, that didn't work. Okay, don't dwell on it. Let's move forward and find out. Because oftentimes if you realize that you have no choice but to move forward, then you just go out and do it. And you definitely want to learn from whatever didn't work previously. And I think those are learning opportunities. I think they will tell us a lot. And there's the cliche of, the one thing about a mistake is not learning from it, or however the saying goes. But I think that is totally true. And they become, which I had it written down. I was saying something to change the name of a mistake to what was it? Learning opportunity, or something. I forgot. I came up with a cool term that I already forgot. But they are these little nuggets that will give you feedback on how to approach that problem next time. So it's definitely not a complete loss. You have information that you now know how to use. And oftentimes what we would do with our teams is that's what essentially a post-mortem would be. When we would go through and finish a project, we would go through and break it down and identify what went well and what didn't, and how do you take that information and apply it to next time. And I'll even share, you see this on my Instagram. So now one of the things that's very important on the real estate side of things is social media. And especially you start looking at how to communicate with people, and social media has been one of those. And especially Instagram had really started pushing reels or videos out, and so it's like, okay, I need to start getting involved in that. If you look at my first reel, it's terrible. But I wanted to do it so that I can go through and see what was wrong with it. And I immediately noticed that, if you don't, because of the way that it gets formatted, or the preview window is certain text in certain areas will get cut off. I didn't have the right information on some of the the information was correct, but not in the right order. And then even I thought, as people watch this video, I'm putting the home information at the very end, which means that I'm assuming that they are watching all 30 or 60 seconds of it. Probably not. I should really incorporate that in the first one. So my first reel compared to my latest one's fantastic, so go check it out. But you get that feedback from those failures, or successes, but there's always learning opportunities there. So, yeah.
Great presentation, by the way.
Thank you. Well, thank you.
My question is, the tourist population is increasing. We have them coming from the Bay Area and Southern California. And we have about 40,000 homeless here in Fresno County.
Yeah.
Is your organization doing anything to maybe help resolve it, or increase it, or partnering with it?
That's a great question. That's definitely something, and that's, so actually I'll step back one level, and that's one of the reasons actually why I was here today is as I was going out and taking a look at a lot of my peers that we graduated with, I thought, I really want to get together this group of this brain trust and have them get involved with the university, but also we're all friends who came to Fresno State, and I thought, well, we can definitely help to make this place a better place. So at the moment, no, but that is definitely something that we can go through and take a look at with this essentially brain trust, and how do we make our community better? Because you're right, it is definitely something that is a concern for the community altogether. And yeah, if we can put together a brain trust to help tackle some of these problems and ultimately make meaningful change, then I'm all for it. Absolutely. Go for it. An orange. Yes. Yes. It was easy to spot you.
Thank you, Victor. So you seem to be an avid reader, and you're an adventurer yourself. So what is your next big step, and are you thinking about writing a book about it?
That's a great question. So I have tons of photos. Actually, there's another one back here. This is a mineral peak at night in, next to Sawtooth Peak in Sequoia National Park. which is a really cool thing. On a lot of them, you can see the Milky Way. So I've definitely thought of putting together a book with essentially a lot of the photos that we've taken, because I have, gosh, now 15, 16 years, if not more, of doing this activity. And I have some stuff that's now really cool. But even that, going back to my first one, some of my first photos are not that great. But as of late, they've been pretty fantastic. And I thought, this would be something that would be really cool to package them together and ultimately sell them, whether it be in book form or even to other organizations who want to use stuff. That one that I shot in Yosemite, that one, this past winter, when I put it up at home and like the double monitors, and once it popped up and it loaded, we both went, whoa, that one's really cool. So I definitely want to do something with the catalog that I have. So yeah, in the near future, there might be something that I put out there. Probably specifically in the picture realm at first. So a picture book, yes. Yeah.
So you mentioned mistakes and failures, and one quote that really resonates with me and that I've always used is Winston Churchill's, success is not final, failure is not fatal, it is the courage to continue that counts. So when you made a mistake, when you had a failure, how do you build up that courage to move on and say, you know what, it happened, but, because sometimes we tend to dwell on it, if we know it's our mistake, but it's like, how do you build that courage?
Yeah, absolutely. I think surrounding yourself, as I mentioned earlier, surrounding yourself with people who support you, I think it becomes a big part of it. And whether that be friends or family who believe in you, but also there's so much media out there that you can go through and consume. And I mean, honestly, even a good song will put you in a good mood. So, right? So sometimes if you get that noise that's bumming you out, working out has been one of those for me as well. Like going out and running, it really helps out. Part of the reason why hiking came up is once you do it for so long. Once you're out there for a couple hours, your mind is you're just thinking. You tend to work out a lot of things, and that's been very, very helpful. But honestly, it's trying to put. I heard recently there was a comparison that was used to a lot of the noise that we end up consuming today, a lot of the information that they said it was very much like processed food, and that we should curate the information that we put into our heads very much like we do food to ensure that it's actually beneficial for us, and that it's positive, and that it makes us feel better, and that we can actually take positive action off of it. So definitely that's where I think audiobooks have been very helpful for me, is if I try to figure something out, let's find someone who's written about it, and that in a good song and a good workout always helps out. So. Well, thank you. Well, thank you. I think right here.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Ben, and what you said about when you enter that new position where it's hard, it's difficult, it's something new, I want to go back. A lot of the students here, like myself, are experiencing that right now, or will experience it in the future. What were your 3 takeaways from entering a new position, and is there any advice you'd be able to give us while we're going through that? Because that mental challenge of, hey, this is new, I don't know how to do this, I'm struggling, transitioning from whether it's retail, food, student, into the career we're in, and imposter syndrome is huge. Is there anything you would recommend or give us advice about when you're transitioning through that and fighting that mental battle of I'm able to do this?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think that's definitely something that I've tried to come up with a good solution for that. Where I think one of those has definitely been identifying that is the thing that I'm doing, is this where I want to invest my time in, and what are the things that I'm realizing that are difficult out of this, and is it doubt in yourself? Is it uncertainty? What is that energy? What is that motivation? Because to some extent, you're making an investment in that particular career. And I think you had a great point earlier, where I think one of the fallacies is that you feel that this is something that you may have to do forever, right? But that you can change. So it is that opportunity. And sometimes things may not necessarily work out, and that's okay. But I think it's really trying to find out, is this something that I want to do, and what are the reasons? Why do I feel that this is difficult, and is there a solution to it? And if you're able to map it out, and you go, at least for my example, is very much, this is something that I want to do. Some of that noise and self-doubt that I can't do this. I know that I ultimately can. I just need to get to that point where I put in the work and get to that position where I feel more confident in myself. And I'll tell you, even in just in putting some of this stuff together, you do get some of those thoughts of like, well, why am I speaking up here? What do I have to say what do I have to say that people should hear, and why am I the one who should be presenting? And as I start going through, I go, no, well, I do have experiences that I think I can go ahead and share. And really, for me, it's been very helpful to actually dive into the work and sort of ride that wave and see where it takes me. And you start figuring out, like, no, I do have really good information that I can potentially share. And if I structure it in the appropriate way and tell a good story, then I think people can take something out of it. So for me, it's always been about diving into the work and trying to ignore as much of the noise as possible to really try to navigate through that. But that is a good question. And I think ultimately it's deciding on that thing that you've selected. Is that something that you want to do, and what is the doubt, and really dissecting that doubt altogether. Yeah.
Kind of going off of that, how do you kind of like mentally figure out, like, do I find it hard or do I not enjoy it?
Yeah, that's that.
Do I not enjoy it because I don't know?
Yeah, that. Yes, yeah, and that's, so for those types of questions, honestly, what I would usually do is, that's where I would go on a long hike, because oftentimes what happens is you really start dissecting those. And part of even what helped me put this presentation together is having long sessions where I could go and explore these ideas all together, because I think ultimately that's where you can actually figure a lot of these things out. So even in putting this presentation together, it was difficult for me to be in the zone, then hop out and do something, and when I would try to hop back in the zone again, you sort of like, where was I? You lose your place. So that's where those activities for me, even running was one of those, where you have your mind is just going 100 miles an hour, and you really take those problems and you ask those questions, and you really try to get to the root of it, because really, you know inside what the answer to that question is, and it might be even trying to come out, but just go through and search for it. Take that time to explore it as much as possible and see if you can come up with an answer to that particular question. Just honestly, like, dedicate the time to go out and do that. And I think that becomes important. Yeah. Alrighty, cool.
Yes. Actually, for our kickoff of fall 2022, I have to say that I could not be more. Your comments, your insight, your passion for just doing, is something that can speak to all of us, and I can't thank you enough for being here with us today. I hope you all enjoyed it. I would really love to thank all of the community members who found that parking spot out there and decided to stay and not turn around and go home, so thank you. It's never going to be easy to find that parking spot on the days that we have these events, so I appreciate your endurance in staying with us. And for all the students, I really appreciate you coming. It's a choice, and you made the choice to be here with us today, so thank you for coming. Hope you enjoyed your lunch. More importantly, I hope you enjoyed your conversation at your tables and there's a lot of wisdom, a lot of jewels in what Victor shared with us today, and I hope that you can take something back with you. Victor shared with me before we started today that he would stay here for a few minutes. I know I can see there's a lot of thinking going on out there, and if anybody would like to talk to Victor one-on-one, he'll be here for a little while, so you're more than welcome to do that. I did want to share with you, if I can do this. Let's see, Victor, you got it down. Oh, there we go. I'm so happy I got the slides to go. It just takes a little bit more practice. I am excited about this fall's lineup of speakers. We started with Victor, and we have a really great session coming up in October, so please save the date, October 18th. We're going to have the pleasure of having two speakers, somewhat in the fireside chat format. We're going to have Gloria Wade, who's here with us today, as well as Karen Sperling. They're sitting there in the middle of the table, the two ladies with the wonderful hats. Their journeys, both professionally and personally, have been diverse, interesting, challenging. But what's really interesting, and it ties into a lot of what Victor was saying today, these two speakers that we'll have in October create outside the box, and they also share the just do it philosophy. And they're going to share with you the various chapters of their lives so far, and there's much being written still today for the future, but please join us on the 18th so you can be here to hear two more great speakers that joined Victor's presentation today. We will have a third one in November, and so we always try to have three. If COVID stays away from us, keep your fingers crossed. We're all hoping to be here in person, sharing together again. All signs look like that's going to be a possibility. We'll have 3 events this fall, and we'll have 3 more in the spring. Spread the word. We would like you to be here again, students and community members, and bring somebody with you. Share the word. We'd love to have as many people as possible come to our events. One other announcement I'd like to make is that there is another workshop on campus that's interdisciplinary that some of you may not know about, and it's called the Johansson Faculty Fellows Workshop. If you contact the Lyle Center, you will get the listing of who's coming up. We have faculty members and community members throughout the entire fall speaking for 50 minutes to an hour several times a week on very interesting topics. So if your schedule allows and you have a little break and you just are interested in learning a new topic, exploring something different than what you do every day, please contact the Lyle Center and they can share with you the great speakers and subjects coming up. I see some of those speakers here in the audience today, and I know that their presentations are soon to be available to you at the Lyle Center. So if you're interested, please take a look at those because I think you might enjoy those short sessions. Other than that, thank you so much for coming. We love having you here with us, and have a really great week, and we'll see you in October. Thank you.